are smart, and yes, they're good looking.
Superstars. Yeah.
The most important, I think, is that they really get each other. Okay, that they really understand. And I don't think there are going to have to be too many adjustments made, too many personality changes, etc., to make this thing work. Although, one change has already taken place, is that due to Brian's bad influence, Marilyn has become a White Sox fan. Quite a knowledgeable White Sox fan, I might add. Marilyn, I'm really sorry about that. I've been a White Sox fan for many decades, and I can tell you it is not an easy life. It's better than the life of a Cubs fan, but that's about it.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to thank and congratulate John and Lynn on the person that their daughter has become. I'm sure you're very proud of her, and you should be. Maureen and I are excited to have her as part of our family, and actually it has seemed like for some time like she was already one of us.
That's right.
Yes.
We, of course, are also really proud of Brian. Brian has a lot of admirable qualities and achievements, but I think what I'm most proud of is that Brian is a good person. He's a really good person, and he's a dedicated member of our family. And because of that, Marilyn, I highly endorse him as a husband. You probably didn't need to hear that. Brian, for many of you, I don't know how many of you, don't know Brian very well. And if you don't, it might come as a surprise to you that he's a very good person. You might have thought that because Brian is a lawyer, he's a jerk. You would be wrong. He's the opposite of a jerk. He's a great guy. On the other hand, there are some people here who have known Brian for a long time and known him well. And if you're one of them, you have probably noticed that Brian's mind doesn't work like the mind of a normal person. Am I right, Eileen? Brian has his own way of thinking and talking, and very often he focuses on things that an ordinary person wouldn't pay any attention to. So for those of you who have wondered about that, I can assure you that he has always been that way. I have some examples. We began to notice in a big way that Brian was unusual when he was about 3 years old. Okay. At that time, he was having trouble getting to sleep at night, but he had his own room, and we made him stay in bed anyway. One night, and of course, if he was staying in bed, that means his mind would go wild. One night, I went in to check on him late, and he was wide awake. I mean, his mind had obviously been going crazy. And he opened it right up with the question that was the most foremost in his 3-year-old mind. Does American Airlines fly to Canada? I was taken aback, but I said, yes, it does. And he followed right up with, how long does it take? At that point, it became pretty clear to me that he was going to be a challenge. I hoped it would be a fun challenge, and it has been. At the same time, I hoped that he wouldn't turn into an axe murderer. So far, he didn't. Then, when Brian, also you probably noticed that Brian is kind of an independent person in a lot of ways. And that first showed up big when he went to preschool. After about a week of preschool, Maureen picked him up one night, and the teacher sought her out to tell her that she was concerned about Brian. She said that today was Brian's day for show and tell, and he didn't bring anything. And she was concerned that he would be embarrassed or upset because of this. She didn't call it a failure, but that's what she meant. So Maureen talked to Brian about it, and Brian said, I don't want to bring my toys to school. Yes, Brian consciously blew off the first assignment of his academic. It keeps going. When Brian was in kindergarten, he started to take an interest in what I did for a living. And one weekend I told him that I was going to have to work hard that week because I was going to spend the whole week giving seminars to option traders from various international banks. He didn't say anything. I went to work on Monday, came home on Monday night, late, tired, and Brian was bubbling over with anticipation. He had been thinking. And he was so anxious to ask questions that he asked them all at once. He spit them right out. He said, were they nice to you? Were they taller than you? Did they give you money? I guess those are the big three.
Yes.
Among Brian's early passions were sports and math. You wouldn't think they go together, but for Brian they did. He was still in preschool in 1991 when the Bulls first won the NBA title. And it seemed like he watched almost every game. I mean, he probably didn't, but it seemed like it. He was always watching. And that's how he learned arithmetic. Okay? They would put the score on the screen, and as Brian saw it develop, he would learn subtraction. And then, after a little while, if they were winning 140-88, Brian would say they're up by 16. He learned how to do subtraction by watching the Bulls. Not long after that, he worked his way into probability. If the announcer said that a certain player was a 70% free thrower, we would have to discuss whether it was likely he would make both ends of a two-shot foul. I think my favorite conversation about this took place in April of '94. Okay, at this point, there were 10 days before the end of the season, of the regular NBA season, and the Bulls were having a good year, even though Michael Jordan was off playing baseball. And one night, I came home from work, and he had the look, like, we got to talk right now. And so we sat down and he asked me, what do you think the Bulls' chances are of finishing with the best record in the East? Now, needless to say, I hadn't given any thought to that. Okay. But I said, I think they're pretty good. What do you think? Honest to God, Brian said, I think it's Bulls 58%, New York 21%, and Atlanta 21%. That was Brian's version of second grade math. And of course, I had a question about it, but I couldn't poke any holes in his thought process. Given it a lot of thought. One other early passion that he had was politics. And I can remember in 1992, he was barely in the first grade at the presidential election. And we had a really good conversation about who ought to be president. And he really thought about it a lot, so he had my attention then. But then in '94, 2 years later, the Republicans took over the Congress, and President Clinton had to figure out what to do about it. So he scheduled a speech on TV where he would tell us what his approach was going to be to the Republican Congress, and I wanted to watch it. So I was sitting in our family room with the TV on just before the speech started, and Brian came in and asked me what I was doing. So I told him. He didn't say a word. He walked over and he climbed up into a big chair. He was so little he had to climb. He climbed up into a big chair and just sat there and looked at the screen. Didn't say a word. Eventually the speech started. Still didn't say a word. 15 minutes later, he still hadn't said anything. And then all of a sudden he turned to me and he said, he's never going to get his picture on a dollar bill. Well, those are a few insights into how Brian got this way. And I think for those of you who are old friends or relatives, you're not surprised. I'm not surprised. Brian, don't ever change.
Yeah.